Sure. Yeah, my name is Tim Bowles, and I consider myself a lifetime educator, teacher. That is really my primary career, although I now am the founder and the senior principal investigator of the organization that I founded. I was also the executive director until recently, and I decided to step down from that role, and I'm doing some different things for the organization now. But I've had a lifelong passion for learning about different cultures and learning about different languages. That's something that's very interesting to me. So, in addition to English, I speak Spanish. And my first job out of school, when I had my completed my master's degree, was as a Spanish teacher. So I like learning languages. I consider that fun and an interesting hobby. So I am currently brushing up on a little Italian and occasionally dabble in German and French. So those are things that I like to do. I also like to read and to travel. And I'm very eager to meet all of you this morning and learn about what you like and what you do, and also to tell you about the organization that I started, which works with teachers of multilingual learners in the United States. And we annually assess over 3 million multilingual learners. And just so you have a context, there are a little over 5 million multilingual learners in schools, in public, mostly public schools, but some private schools as well, in the United States today. So we are the assessment provider for more than half of the multilingual learners that are in the United States today, in
Yes.
41 states and territories. Good
Good
morning.
evening,
Yeah.
sir.
A good evening for you. Yeah.
This is Husnia. I am a 8th grader. Nice to meet you, sir. May I ask
Nice
you a
to.
question?
Yes, please.
How do you see the role of multilingual learners evolving in the education system, and what steps in WIDA taking to support this evolution?
Yeah. First, let me say all of the questions that you sent me ahead of time, including this first one, are very, very good questions. So I thank you for your questions. Um, so the important thing is that multilingual learners be seen as equal learners in all subject matter areas within the school. So the mistake that was made in the past was that oftentimes people focused almost exclusively on trying to teach multilingual learners the English, forgetting that they also have to be learning the same curriculum and the same subject matters that other students in the school are learning, like mathematics, science, social studies, history, geography, all of these, music, art, literature, all of these things that we learn in school are also important for multilingual learners. So, what our organization specializes in is helping teachers understand how do you teach math and science at the same time that the student may not be completely proficient in English yet. So the student is always on a path towards proficiency in the language, right? Just like maybe many of you are on a path towards improving your English, right? These students in our schools are also on a path. The beginning student just knows a little bit of English, and then There's this journey that typically lasts, on average, 5 to 7 years for students to completely um, get to the point of full proficiency and the ability not just to speak basic English, but also to read, write, and understand a difficult high school lecture, for example, when a teacher is trying to explain something about science or math, right? Our students need to be able to understand these explanations and participate in those content area classes equally to other students. So our mission is to help teachers understand how to use methodologies that promote the learning of English at the same time as the learning of science and the learning of math and the learning of other subjects. So making multilingual learners, getting back to your question, making multilingual learners full partners in their learning is what we try to encourage our teachers around the country to do. I'm
Yes, sir.
sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, Tim.
Hello. How are you?
I am fine. I am fine, sir. How are you?
I am doing fine today. I'm doing great. Nice to meet you.
Me too. My name is Nitvika. I am an 8th grader from GBHS School, Ailaram. Here I am so lucky to interact with you, sir. Here I
Mhm.
would like to ask you a question. My question is, can you share some insights into the latest research and innovations in language assessment and education that WIDA is currently exploring?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, very good question. So actually, this goes very well with the answer that I was giving before, because what I was talking about, this connection between learning a language and learning content while learning a language is very important. The research in this area started many years ago in the 1970s. There was a famous researcher and writer in British Columbia in Canada by the name of Bernard Mohan, and he wrote a book called Language and Content. And this was a very important book that that posited that the best way to learn languages is to learn languages while you're actually learning another subject area, right? So that we don't necessarily have to learn a language by simply studying the rules of the language. There can be a place for that, but you can also learn a language while uh, sitting in a science class or in a math class, if the methodologies encourage the learning of that language. So it turns out that a lecture style from the front of the class is very difficult for students who are learning English or are learning any language to understand. But if I put students in small groups and let them discuss among themselves, that promotes more language interaction and it becomes a better language learning classroom, right? So these are the things that we study. We also study the effects of our standards on classrooms. We have a set of standards that go with our assessment, with our test, and these standards are in the areas of the social and emotional language development, the language of various classrooms like language arts, science, social studies, and math. So that, for example, a math teacher can work together with an English as a second language teacher to plan lessons where the students will learn English at the same time that they're learning the math and science subjects. and they use the standards as a blueprint for developing their curriculum and their lesson plans in the school that the students will learn from. And so we go into classrooms and we look at the effects of these standards as students are trying to learn based on the lessons that these standards have helped to create. And that's just one kind of research that we do in our program. We also do research on the assessment itself in order to have a valid and reliable assessment. You have to constantly do research to make sure that the items that the students are taking in the test are actually working the way they're supposed to work and measuring what they're supposed to measure. So those are some of the things that we do research on.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Farhat,
Thank you
over to
very
you.
much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Good evening.
Hello, team.
Yes. Hello.
Good morning.
Yes. And good evening to you.
My name is Farhad. I am an eighth grader from JPH School, Elavaram. I would
Uh-huh.
like to ask a question. Can I? Could you please offer some tips for my Indian students studying in India regarding improving their English spoken skills?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question. Well, I mean, the most important thing for speaking a language is, of course, practicing speaking the language. So you might be able to do that with other students in your school, but I think nowadays we have a world where all of you seem to have access to the internet. So I'm wondering if you have an opportunity to find other students of your age who are living in places like the United Kingdom or Australia or the United States and are English speaking students who might like to have conversations with you. So if you can find uh, conversation friends online to practice your English, this would be a very good way to practice your English. I also think there are other things that are more indirect that will help with speaking. Just simply listening practice. If you have access to um, shows that can where the audio is in English, that can give you practice listening. I know here in the United States, we watch movies oftentimes on Netflix. I'm not sure. Is Netflix available
Yeah,
in
yeah,
India?
it's available here.
Yeah, and you can set the language to English for most of the shows, right? And you can also set closed captions to English underneath, so you can listen to English and you can read English while you watch maybe your favorite movie on on Netflix. That's a very good way to listen and get reading practice. But in terms of speaking, I also recommend that you try to find someone to speak with because there's no substitute for speaking and actually practicing the language, right? But there are other ways to listen and read. And I used to, when I was a teacher, I used to recommend that my students begin reading with children's storybooks because oftentimes those have lots of pictures and so they're easy to read. And then once they could do children's storybooks well, we would recommend to them that they use comic books because comic books also have a lot of pictures. So it helps if you have a picture to connect a picture to the word because it will help you understand what you're reading. So you use different levels of reading materials to elevate your to elevate your proficiency over time. So this is an effective way to read, to listen, and then when it comes to speaking, there's no substitute for just practicing.
Yeah, that's what exactly I have been doing for the last 8 years.
Good.
So when it comes to
Yeah.
the communication, I mean, spoken skills, I like to connect my students with as many educators as possible, as many
Yeah.
students as possible. So I have witnessed a considerable progress in my students' ability
Hmm.
to speak in English because
Yeah.
of these global
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We call those proficiency-based
Yeah.
approaches, right? Yeah.
My name is Mamata, an educator from ZPHS School, Elavaram. My hobbies are reading books, playing games, and drawing pictures.
Uh-huh. Good.
My
I
So what
have
future
a
you
are
want to be?
to become an English teacher.
good. That sounds very nice. I also have a daughter who likes to draw pictures.
I would like to ask you a question, sir. Can I ask?
Yes, of course.
Here, my question is: what inspired you to start WIDA, and what have been some of the most rewarding moments in your journey with the organization?
Yeah. Okay. That's also a very good question. Thank you for that question. Um, I have a story to tell about starting WIDA. I was working at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction at the time. This was back in the late 1990s, long before most of you were born. And I was the director of bilingual and English as a second language programs for the state. And I used to go travel to schools and work with teachers in the schools. And the teachers told me that they didn't like the the English test that they had to give, that the test wasn't very good and it didn't give good information. So one day we were working with a professor that was helping us sort of make sense of the tests that we were using at the time. And this professor said to me, you know, these tests are not very good. You really should develop your own assessment and make a better one. And I was at the time, uh, there was a colleague who was standing next to me who was the director of testing for the state of Wisconsin. And he started laughing and he said, yeah, Tim, you only need maybe about $3 million and you could develop your own test. And of course, $3 million is US dollars is a lot of money, especially that was 25 years ago that he said that. And so we had a good laugh. But then the next day, when I was in my office, there was an email that came in from the U.S. Department of Education announcing a competitive grant for building assessments. And the U.S. Department of Ed was going to give state departments of education up to $2 million to build better assessments. So I said, there's 2/3 of the money that I would need to build an assessment, right? So we decided to apply for that grant and also with a colleague of mine who I've worked with for many years. Her name is Margot Gottlieb, and she is also an expert in assessment and standards development. And we wrote the grant together and submitted it to Washington, D.C., and we were awarded the um, the money. So we were awarded $2 million. And on that original grant, I had three states that were participating with us, the state of Wisconsin, the state of Delaware, and the state of Arkansas. And we named the project WIDA because Wisconsin, Delaware, Arkansas sounds like WIDA. So that was why the name of the organization was WIDA. Then by the time I got the money, which was in 2003, um, I also I also was finishing my own doctorate at the time in 2003, just about the same time, and we got the money. And then there were eight additional states that heard about us and what we were doing, and they decided to join too. So then we decided, well, maybe the name Wisconsin, Delaware, Arkansas isn't a very good name, but we like the name WIDA. So we decided to keep the acronym, but drop the name. And so that was the story of how we got the funding that we needed. And I teamed up with with a nonprofit organization that is located in Washington, D.C., that's called the Center for Applied Linguistics. That's another organization you can look up on the web if you want. Their acronym is CAL, Center for Applied Linguistics. And they have test item developers who specialize in developing language assessments. So I worked together with that group, and together we got them funding, and we built the first set of standards and the first assessment. So by the time the test was done, I moved the project from the Department of Education, which mission is only to serve Wisconsin schools. And so I had to move the project down the street about a mile from where I was working is the University of Wisconsin, Madison, which is a very famous university here in the United States. It's a very it has a very good school of education. In fact, right now we are ranked the number one school of education in the United States. So we have a very, very strong education department here in the university. So in the year 2006, I moved the project to the university, and we had 12 states with us at that time. So then we continued to grow at the university, and we currently have 41 states and territories that are working with our project. The reason why we've been so successful is because we do more than just provide a good assessment of English progress. The teachers like us because we have a good set of standards, a good assessment, but also we provide online resources, online professional learning. And in the early days, before we were completely online, we used to actually get on airplanes, fly to the States, and work with the teachers and help them understand how to do a better job of teaching their students. So, as a group, we've been very successful because we're not in business just to make money on a test. We're in business to actually help teachers and help students. And this is the reason why we've been so successful. We also have international schools using our assessment all over the world. Um, we have two different assessments. One is called the access test, and that one is used only in the United States. We have another test called model, and that one is used outside the United States as well as within the US. And so there are schools all over. I believe there are maybe one or two schools in India that are also using our assessment, the model assessment. And they would probably be international American schools
Yeah,
that would be using.
probably.
Yeah. Um, so what I've enjoyed is watching the organization grow. from a small organization to a successful, larger organization. We have 150 employees now that work with us, plus our partners at the Center for Applied Linguistics in Washington, D.C. We have another partnership with a for-profit testing organization out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, called Data Recognition Corporation, and they help us um, present the test online because in the early days of the assessment, it was a paper and pencil test. Now it's a test online because everything in our world has moved online, right? So in the year 20, right around 2015, we moved the test from paper and pencil to online testing. We still have a paper and pencil version of the test that is used in some places and also for students that need accommodations, students that have special needs use that assessment. But most of the students today take the test online. So that's, that it's been very gratifying for me to see the organization grow. Also, one of the things that I used to do more of was to go out and travel to other places in the US and work with teachers and talk with teachers. And actually, I've been to schools in China, in Indonesia, in Europe, in Latin America. I went to an international school in Buenos Aires. So I love going out and meeting teachers and students and getting to know um, the schools that they work in.
Hello, Tim.
Yes.
My name
Hello.
is Mehnaz. I'm an educator from JPHS Helavaram. It's my honor
Uh-huh.
to ask this question. Can I ask Tim?
Of course.
You provide tests for over 3 million K-12 students in the USA. What kind of standards you maintain in designing it?
Yes. So I mentioned the standards that we have, and you can actually go to our website, and if you search, you'll be able to find the WIDA standards. They're available on the website, and you can see them. So you can actually see them. And they're meant to be used as language standards in tandem together with content standards, right? So if you, for example, look for the language of science, then you would also take a set of content standards, which in the United States, teachers, each state has their own standards typically for content areas. We don't have a set of national standards, although there's a recommended set of science standards, for example, that are national, but each state has its own adopted and adapted set of science standards, math standards, music standards, art standards, all the different standards for school are basically in the United States, the school systems very much run at the level of the state education systems, right? And so our standards are meant to be used along with these content standards. So what our standards do is they give the teachers ideas for how to teach the math or the science in ways that also promote the learning of English at the same time as they're learning the science, right? So they can practice speaking about the solar system, for example. And they're learning English, they're learning the words and the phrases that they need to describe the solar system or to describe the process of how a cell divides if you're learning science, right? And you're learning um, the 4 steps of cellular division. Of course, to do that in English, you have to be able to say those words and say those phrases in English, right? While you're speaking about the science topic. So this is the way that our standards work with other sets of standards.
Thank you so much. I request you to give a message to my students.
Okay, yes. Well, my message is I admire you very much, and I applaud you learning English. You know, English has become the international language of the world, for better or worse, but it is what it is. And I think it's very important to keep your home language, of course, also. And this is something we stress, your home language, and you have an opportunity in English in India to learn various languages. I know because you have your local language, right? For
Yes.
example, all of you, what is your local language?
Yeah, actually, we all speak Telugu. Telugu is a local language here. Our national language is
Telugu.
Hindi.
Telugu. Yeah, and I think Urdu is spoken
Yeah, yes, yes.
nearby,
It is spoken. Yeah, some of the my
and also Hindi is your national language.
yes.
So it is, I think, very good to live in a multilingual country like India. Not enough Americans in the United States speak multiple languages, unfortunately, but you are very lucky to have many languages in the US. I spent some time, by the way, in Bangalore, India, many years ago.
Oh,
So I know that in Bangalore they speak Karnataka,
yes,
uh,
absolutely.
and they speak my friends in Bangalore also spoke Mangalorean. They were they were from Mangalore originally, and many of them grew up also learning Hindi in the schools, but speaking various South Indian languages. So I think this is very good, very important, and also learning English will allow you opportunities. Hopefully, you'll get an opportunity maybe to travel to an English-speaking country, spend some time in an English-speaking country someday. Um, and, you know, we live in a world that is smaller than ever today because of the internet. We can communicate all around the world, and that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So I applaud you for continuing to learn English, and I wish you the very best in your journey of learning.